Good afternoon or good morning for those on the West Coast, and welcome to today's webinar covering a brand new tool that's going to be in Stats America called the Analysis Platform for Risk, Resilience, and Expenditure, also APRED for short, that was developed with the IBRC and Stats America, Indiana University's Crisis Technologies Innovation Lab, with the support from the Economic Development Administration's Research and National Technical Assistance Program. The goal of today is to provide a brief use case focused demo of APRED for everybody. We're going to have some time at the end for Q&A and feedback. If you do have questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat. We'll be monitoring that, and we'll be sure to address them during the Q&A session. On today's call, we have myself, William Liao, the project manager for APRED. We have our project's principal investigator, Dr. David Wild, our co-principal investigator, Carol Rogers, our data scientist, Miriam Lukill, our user experience engineer, Ike Obi, our software engineer, Soichi Hayashi, our research portfolio administrator, Kim Rodman. I also want to quickly acknowledge our other data scientists who helped make this work possible, Logan Paul, who unfortunately was not able to make today's webinar. And lastly, we have our colleague, Sydney Milner, who serves as a program analyst at the US Economic Development Administration. So to kick things off, I'd like to hand it off to Sydney to share a few remarks.
Hi, everyone. As Will said, my name is Sydney Milner, and I am a program analyst on our research and national technical assistance team over at EDA. We're really excited for all of you guys to be here and be with us as we launch this new APRED tool. Please feel free to engage. Let us know if you have any questions in the chat box. We're so excited to introduce this tool, and I'm happy to be here. So I'm going to pass it back over to the team at IBRC and Will.
All right, thank you so much, Sydney. So before we roll into the demo, I want to hand it off real quick to Dr. David Wild to provide a little bit of context about APRED.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. So this work comes out of a project that we carried out with the EDA to really evaluate the success of EDA's disaster awards from the 2012 supplemental funds. And in the process, we developed the APRED platform to help us perform this evaluation. We realized it was a useful tool for many other purposes. So in today's demo, we're going to be showing you how you can use the APRED platform to learn about factors related to risk, resilience, and expenditure in your own communities. So without further ado, I'd like to hand things off to Carol and Ike, who will be running today's demo.
Thank you so much, David. And I just want to do a shout out. The partnership with you, David, and your team at the Crisis Technologies and Innovation Lab, which is in the Luddy School of Informatics, and our center, which is part of the Kelley School at Indiana University, has really been worthwhile because we've been melding our knowledge bases together to really help advance the understanding and the metrics that can be available for economic development across the country, and to utilize your wealth of knowledge, research, and data science capabilities to help get measures out that can be actionable for people. So I just wanted to make a point that we partnered together on this, two kind of different groups. And I think collaboration is definitely the best way to get the best information out to people. So this afternoon, what we're going to be focusing on is county, or rather what they call them in Louisiana, a parish in Louisiana called Livingston. And what we're going to do is hone in Ike as the user experience developer, and he tested this out with lots of people across the country. Ike's going to show you how things work, and then I'm going to weigh in terms of how you can apply this intelligence to work that you're actually doing to develop strategies, to work with your stakeholders to understand what do we need to know about when and how to be resilient across our economies in the face of both natural and man-made disaster. Obviously, we all have a lot of experience going through what was a considerable disaster, which was the COVID-19 pandemic. And many of us are moving out of that. I'd like to give a shout out to Sydney and all of your colleagues at the Economic Development Administration because of the support that you continue to give to the work that you're doing to help get funding, resources to communities all across the country to help them in their recovery, to help them to rebuild, and even allowing economic development districts the support they need to bring on recovery coordinators. And we think that many people across the country are going to find this tool useful in their recovery and also for their planning for the next hit, whether it be storms, natural disasters, or otherwise. So now I'm going to turn it over to you, Ike, to start taking us through the actual tool. And I see you've got the homepage up and ready.
Yeah, thank you, Carol, for the introduction. Before we dive into the demo, I'd like to show you around the homepage of the APRED platform. When you come to the homepage for the first time, you can learn more about the use cases that we've developed for the platform. These use cases, like Carol mentioned, was developed in consultation with various practitioners across the country. And this would help you as, to quickly see the kind of use cases, the kind of information that you can get from the platform and how they can support your daily activities. We also developed the frequently asked questions, which again was developed from questions that we got from practitioners while developing the platform. And these questions, frequently asked questions, provides answers to any question that you might have while using the platform. I'm now going to go ahead and open the APRED platform itself. Okay, so this is the homepage, the map page of the APRED platform. And this page has two main use cases. Number one, it provides a macro view of FEMA disaster declarations over the years for all the counties across the United States. Number two, it also provides information on the disaster resilience indicators for all the counties across the United States. I'm going to start from the FEMA disaster declaration use case and hand it back to Carol to provide more context.
Okay, thanks so much, Ike. The first thing that we think, and in working with users who allowed us to test this tool with them, because we got a lot of user input on this, is to look at this map, look at the whole country, and begin to get an understanding of where different types of disasters are impacting different places across the country. And as a rule, we know from reading headlines about wildfires in the West and floods in the South and the Midwest, hurricanes around the coasts, tornadoes, which tend to be prominent across the Plain States and the Midwest. We can get a sense of that by looking at the map, because we're leaning on all of those FEMA disaster declarations going back more than 20 years. So we're providing the history to you with this. And as Ike is showing here, you can select any year that you want. And help me out, Ike, what's the earliest year that we have available there? If you just go down to the
1961.
Yeah, 1961. Now, some of the data in the earlier years, the 60s, the 70s, there's some gaps there. The data collection system was not what it is today. So just a little warning to the users about that. Certainly for economic developers, but also for businesses, nonprofit organizations, anyone who's trying to understand quickly what parts of their supply chain, for example, are going to be affected. Because if you think about it, now we're not showing the whole world here, we're showing the United States, but think about all the goods and services that you get through digital means or through actual trucks on the road, trains, ships getting cargo through the Great Lakes or the coast. Think about how it's going to affect your supply chain when that disaster happens. So the map tool is really useful for that. You can also select through different types of disasters so that you can see where severe storms are most prevalent versus hurricanes versus fire or flood. And also, and if you click on the biological, I think you're going to see that COVID impacted everybody. So it's everywhere. And the depth of the hurt is something that we touch on in APRED, but you can also find more information on Stats Indiana about that. And just very quickly, if we could show people what's in the other.
Sure.
So that's where earthquakes, coastal storms, snowstorms, landslides, volcanoes, etc. That's the category that those fall into.
Okay, now let's switch to the disaster resilience map. And now I hand it back to Carol once more.
Okay. Well, basically with this, we're using the data science team at CTIL, use the Susan Cutter. Everybody calls it by her name. I don't know, David, if there's another name for her research. We always call it the Cutter research, but she came up with a paradigm and a way to categorize resilience indicators that cross social metrics, economic metrics, infrastructure, and community capital to measure either frankly, it's from the lowest resilience to the highest resilience. So if you want to take people through each one of those, Ike,
Okay.
And just tell them how the tool works.
Okay, so just like Carol mentioned, these indicators are divided into 4 categories: the social, economic, infrastructure, and community capital. And again, this basically allows you to see the disaster resilience levels of each county across the 4 parameters. So now we're gonna move into the demo itself. While the map shows you a macro view of counties across the United States, you can use the search box to get in-depth information about a specific county or parish. And for this demo, we're gonna be using Livingston Parish in Louisiana. Okay, so this is the in-depth page that shows the holistic information for Livingston Parish in Louisiana. The information on this page is divided into 5 sections. The first page shows you the storm history of this parish since 1950s. The second page shows you all FEMA disaster declarations that have been listed for this county. The fourth section provides information on businesses that might be vulnerable based on their disaster exposure for this parish. The third, fourth page now presents information on the disaster resilience levels of this county. So while the business sector talks about businesses, the disaster resilience talks more about how disaster might impact individuals in this county. And the fifth section provides in-depth information on the demographic details of this county. So we're gonna start from the storm history. And I'm going to hand it back to Carol once more to provide insight on how this information would help practitioners.
Yeah, one of the things that is we think enormously useful about this visualization is that you can actually see year by year by year what types of disasters were declared in the parish or county, and get a sense of which types of disasters may be accelerating or decelerating over time. And these data are updated annually, but it gives you a good understanding. This would be a great graphic to share with your stakeholders if you have advisory groups or steering committees, with your business leader teams, to show them in quite graphic detail what hits us and when.
Okay, thank you, Carol. And just like Carol mentioned, you can also download this visualization and add them to your reports or any application that you might be preparing. Now let's switch to the next section, which is the FEMA disaster declaration section. So once more, I hand it back to Carol for more context.
Yeah, certainly, like one of the things that we're hoping that people can get from this is a listing, and it starts with the most current disaster declaration, and you can scroll down throughout your history, and you actually get some critical pieces of information. On the left-hand side, it's showing you when the disaster itself occurred, the duration of the disaster. And certainly, at least in my mind, we don't always remember in Indiana, for example, when that really big tornado hit Columbus, Indiana, which destroyed with the resulting floods, destroyed the hospital in Columbus and a number of businesses. And so in a way, this is kind of our disaster memory bank. You can also see what type of disaster it was. So we're looking right now, Ike is hovering over the coastal storm that occurred in Livingston as a result of Hurricane Zeta. And over to the far right, there's actually a hyperlink to the disaster, the specific disaster declaration that gives a lot of detail from FEMA about when the disaster was declared and what were the results of that declaration. Was it county specific? Was it multiple county? Was it an entire state, an entire region? So you can get a lot of information there. What's also helpful is that there are links to or tags to look at hazard mitigation, individual assistance capability, as well as individuals and households. And you can link there to find out, well, what is it actually that FEMA does to help once a disaster, a federal disaster declaration is made. And so it's a useful way to see what types of assistance are available for these different disasters.
Thank you so much, Carol. And again, we've listed our data sources down here. You can visit the FEMA website for more information if the need arises. So now let's switch to the next section, which is the business sector vulnerability section. And again, I hand it back to Carol to explain to practitioners how this page provides in-depth insight they will find useful for their activities.
Well, certainly, if you're facing floods, fire, the 7 horses of the apocalypse, if you will, frequently these are things that are happening to the physical built environment, right? So hospitals, schools, businesses, utilities, retail, trade, the whole gamut of industries could be affected. And what the data science team built here was a way to see what the proportionality of vulnerability is for businesses. So in looking at the utilities industry, for example, and often utilities are going to be, the first thing to go, the lights go out, right? And then we lose the internet. So with utility companies, what you can do is look at what is the estimated vulnerability of the number of establishments in that industry. That's the graph on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you can see the number of employees that are most likely to be most vulnerable. How many of our employees are actually the folks who are going to be on the ground or in the plants, the utility stations, et cetera, and get a sense of that proportion, which frankly can be really helpful in teaming this up with your work with your local governments to see what their disaster recovery plans are when a disaster hits. And you may be able to provide them with some better intelligence in terms of how many jobs are going to be affected because of this. So for Livingston Parish, as we scroll down, we can see the information industry, the proportional effects there, accommodation and food services, just like with the pandemic, oftentimes when there's built environment damage that's occurring, it's going to shut down grocery stores, fast food restaurants, things like that. So you can see that those can be highly vulnerable. Transportation and warehousing in Livingston, not hardly any, back in the early years as David's group was studying the impact of earlier disasters from 2012 forward. You can see that was in Livingston County, was not nearly as impacted as some of the other industries. You can also show the non-vulnerable sectors for your county. And again, this is going to be county specific to give you some guideposts in terms of the number of jobs and employment. And every county is going to look a bit different. It depends on where you are. A West Coast county is particularly in the line of fire, if you will, as well as mudslides and things like that, is going to show a different profile of vulnerability.
Thank you, Carol. And again, once more, you can download these data points or these charts to add them to your application or documentation if the need arises. Now let's switch to the next section, which is the disaster resilience section. And for this page, we have legend that helps you to read the map. But then again, I hand back to Carol to provide more context.
Yeah, and thanks for giving a heads up to that legend, Ike, because that's really helpful. When you look at these graphs, there's quite a bit of information being shown in this graph. The first thing is to anchor your eye on the line with the circles, because that's your county. The gray area is the US average, and the blue area, it designates what's happening in your state. So in this instance, we're looking at Livingston, and we can see that with educational equity, for example, that the county is much more similar to their state average in terms of the ratio of people with more than a high school degree. And in this case, we're seeing a percentage of population in that county that actually has a lower value, lower education. When we look over at the age graph, for example, you can see that the age profile of the population under age 65, Livingston County has a different profile than the state or the US average. So we encourage you to spend time with these graphs to understand as we scroll through the different social resilience factors to see where your pain points might be in terms of having higher levels of language capacity, where you may have a significant population where English is the second language, population with a particular mobility or work disability issues, because that's going to impact how you think about what your recovery is going to be and who's going to need help, who needs more help than others. So we look at health coverage, and there's a large number of these, and you can just keep scrolling all you want, Ike. Looking at economic resilience and housing capital, single sector employment dependence. You know, how are we a manufacturing county, or are we, for example, not strong in any particular industry because we might be a bedroom community? People with access to health. How many physicians per capita do we have? Do we have enough doctors in this place? And we can scroll down and you can really study these, because there's a lot of meat here to help you consider using, for example, in your SWOT analysis, when you're looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And as we scroll down again, community capital, where we're looking at how attached to a place people might be. Do they have a reliance on religion? That can be a good support in a community. Civic engagement in a community. And also looking at the population that's employed in what they call the creative class. For anybody familiar with Richard Florida's work, looking at the importance of the creative class to a particular community, and looking at what is the glue that keeps us together and can help us recover from a disaster.
Thank you so much, Carol. So now let's switch to the fifth section, which is the county details section. Again, this page provides information on economic and demographic data for Livingston Parish, Louisiana. I hand it back to Carol once more to provide in-depth insight and context.
Well, I'll tell you, visually this page is compelling, but it really does tell little mini stories in every graph. So we can see what the history of the population is. So Livingston County obviously is a growing county, because we can see every age group has grown, except for the yellow one. Which age group are you hovering over there, Ike? Okay, the 18 to 24 age group is remarkably the same over the past decade. But the working age population has increased, kids in school, as well as the older population. We can see in Livingston Parish that the racial and ethnic composition of the county has maintained a pretty significant white, predominantly white population, with some growth in the African American or Black population, but not as racially diverse as some other places may be. In terms of the unemployment rate, APRED is providing you with a 24-month average unemployment rate, and this really ties in nicely with one of the indicators that the Economic Development Administration uses. One of the metrics for their grants is to look at, is your 24-month rate higher or lower than the US average rate. And so that we can see here that Livingston County over the past 24 months, and that does include those months, this is current through May, it has continued to be over the pandemic significantly lower than the US. One of the critical things nowadays, as we see many communities tackling access and subscription to broadband, you know, are we on the internet? Do we have good internet access? Certainly work from home has relied on that tremendously. We can see the total number of households in the parish, and of those 80%, indicated through that survey that they have a broadband subscription. But a telling question is, who are the 20% who don't? And being able to look into that and follow links to some of the American Community Survey data can help answer that question. We don't answer it specifically here, but William, it might be something we'd want to put in a bucket, right? We can also see which industries employ the most people in the parish, and you can click on the show more information to actually get a whole bunch more tables that actually look at the time series of population, the density of population. Many communities are questioning their density. How dense are we? And is density actually a good thing? Should we seek more density? Or as they might say in the movie Back to the Future, you are my density. If anybody remembers that movie. Ike, back to you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Carol. And just to mention, you can download any of these data sources and add them to your presentation or reports. If you also want to get access to the JSON file, you can also download this as well and programmatically use them any way you want. We've also added links and information about our data sources and other additional resources that we think would provide you with more insight than what we've provided on the platform. So now I'll hand it back to William to continue and conclude the presentation.
Thank you, Ike. One thing I want to highlight before actually we shift to the Q&A section is that a lot of this data is downloadable here, as Ike mentioned, but also on Stats America's new website that will be rolled out next week. A lot of the data here is also going to be downloadable in CSV format. So you can look to that section on the new Stats America website to be able to get access to the data that goes into this platform. So let's go ahead and shift now to the Q&A and feedback section. So thank you all to those of you who have been submitting questions. I've been logging them to make sure that we can address them. Before we start going through the list, though, I do have a more direct question for the group that you can provide feedback on now or later in the follow-up Qualtrics survey that we're sending. But right now, so the team is working on a predictive cost tool that evaluates the financial impact that disasters have on each industry in your county. And so what it would specifically show is what the expected change in GDP for each industry in your county is after a disaster, based on an analysis of the financial impact of disasters over the last 20 years or so. And what we're wanting to understand from you guys is if this would be a useful tool to have access to, if this information would be valuable. So again, I invite feedback on this now if anybody would like to provide it. Otherwise, you're also welcome to provide this feedback in the Qualtrics survey that the Stats America team is going to be sending out shortly after this webinar. Okay, so again, I just wanted to float the idea, and as you all have ideas, please feel free to reach out to us directly at ctil.iu or at CTIL at Indiana University, sorry, CTIL at iu.edu. I'll put that in the chat box, or in the Qualtrics survey that we're sending out. We'd love to hear your feedback on this concept that we're working on. So now let's go ahead and shift to the other questions that we received during the presentation. So Ashley had a question about information for New Mexico, and she mentioned there being disaster declarations for flooding in the state. So the answer to that question is yes. And Ike, if you could actually go to the map, please, we can show that really quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, so go to the, yes, thank you. All right, and if you go to 2013.
Okay.
Right. So as you mentioned, Ashley, you said that there were disaster declarations for flooding. So you can see here that this is the most recent instance where we have disaster declarations for flooding. And again, if you want to click into a specific county, you can enter it into the search box in the top left, or you can go into the map and click on the county of interest. So you have both options to go deeper into the other sections that was presented during today's presentation. So thank you for that question, Ashley. George had a question asking if these are federal disaster declarations only. The answer to that is yes. Currently, it's only federal disaster declarations. We are looking at opportunities to potentially add more data points that are helpful to this platform, but currently that is what is there for the time being. All right. We had another question. Let's see. Will the tool be updated on a regular basis? So that's a Carol, would you like to? I saw your hand raised, so maybe if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Oh, thanks, William. I wasn't too pushy, was I? Yes, it's a terrific question, and we built into this the complete ability for this to be uploaded. All of the data that are being used have been loaded into our databases for Stats America. We have automated packages all set up with the feeds from the various sources. And I even believe that there are some of the feeds that are being updated on a weekly or monthly basis. But the short answer is yes, and it will be continuously updated. So as New American Community Survey data come out in December, because we're using the 5-year estimates that come out each year, those will be updated. We have a direct feed from FEMA for the disaster declarations, and those show up on the disaster declaration page in the tool. And so you always see the most current data available.
Thank you very much, Carol. So the next question that we had was, where do we download the information? And I think this question was posed when you were talking about the graphs specifically, Ike. So Ike, if you could go back to the map and click into a county and maybe go to the storm section, we can highlight how to do this very quickly. Okay, so, well, it's a little hard to see, unfortunately, just because of the browser size, but if you hover over, you click the camera icon in the menu bar at the top, and it downloads the image file to your downloads folder. And that would be one way to quickly save the image and then drop it into an application or to your planning documents, as Ike mentioned earlier. So that would be the way to download it. And again, I want to emphasize that a lot of the underlying data here is going to be available in the download section in the New Stats America website. So please do be on the lookout for that. And obviously more details will be shared with respect to that on next week's webinar.
Yeah, that'll be
Thursday.
A bulk download. And what's currently available here is you can get your individual county. You can also click the print button in your browser and just get a PDF of the page. So that there are a lot of different ways to save the data.
Okay, thank you, Carol. So next question, how does drought disaster show up? We are currently in one in California. So I don't have a direct answer to this right now. I would need to talk to Logan about this. He unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but what I will do is I will connect with Logan on this and I will follow up with you, George. We should have your information from the attendee list, so I will follow up on that. Carol, I don't know if you had anything else to add to that.
No, it's a terrific question, and I don't know if it's in the other category, and I think we are going to have to lean on Logan.
Yeah,
unless Miriam has an answer to that one.
I'm not sure either, but my instinct says it's in the other.
Yeah,
but
so
I'll verify that.
Yeah, we'll get a clear answer on that and follow up with you, George. So thank you. That's a great question. Okay, next question. Gloria asks, can we aggregate counties to do a regional analysis? So the answer to that is yes, we do have a county comparison tool. Ike, would you mind showing that? And Carol, if you could talk through it a little bit, we could just talk about what we have in terms of the capabilities of putting multiple counties side by side.
Sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this. So we do have the option of either comparing county by county or just viewing information for all EDDs within your control. So let's just compare county by county first. And then we can, so here you can view information for two counties side by side, Washington County, Oklahoma, and Monroe County, Indiana. So you can view, compare their population density. You can see the parallels between their unemployment rates trajectories. You can view, again, their population and their business vulnerability information. You also have the option of viewing information for, according to EDDs if you want. So let's just use North Central Alabama. So this makes it very easy for you. So rather than adding counties one after the other, you just select an EDD and it loads down the whole information. So again, you can compare across different parameters for each of the counties selected. So
yeah, I think one thing, and this might be something that we need to put into a bucket. It is not aggregating them though. It's giving you the individual counties.
Yeah, that's correct.
So at this point, one of the things that we will have in the bulk download file will be data aggregated by economic development district, by metropolitan and micropolitan area, and I forget what other regions, as well as the individual county detail. So William, we ought to talk about that. Maybe
Absolutely.
With Luigi and see if that's an easy or a heavy lift, but certainly we'll make sure that those aggregatable things are available to you in the bulk download.
Okay, thank you, Carol and Ike, for sharing this, and Carol for clarifying that. I misread the question, so thank you for adding that information. I'm looking at the chat box right now. I don't see any other questions for the time being. I just want to put out a final call to see if there are any questions before we close up today's webinar.
Well, thanks for putting the link in there. I hope everybody saw that, because there was a comment about I don't have a link to the tool, so that's a good thing for us to share. And I would just like to reemphasize what Sydney and William and others have said, which is we would really love to hear your feedback, and especially when Riley or William send out the Qualtrics survey.
Thank you, Carol. And a quick question, somebody asked, where can the link be found for the recording? That's going to be uploaded to the Stats America website shortly after this presentation. So if you want to be able to view this webinar and go back through the demo that Carol and I gave, you'll be able to access a link to that there.
Yeah, Riley, I don't know if it's going to be available this afternoon. Diane needs to take it. When do you think we'll have it on the Stats America webinar page?
It will be by tomorrow.
Okay, so everybody take a look for it tomorrow, and either William or Riley will also be sending a follow-up email to you with the Qualtrics survey, but also remind you that the recording will be there.
Thank you, and thank you for sending the link. I see that Riley and yeah, Sydney sent the link for where it's going to be uploaded.
Great.
That I'm just taking questions as they come in. So we got one more question here about downloading the JSON file. So what's happening there is when you click the link, I think what's happening is that it's actually opening up in your browser and showing you the data. The way to solve that would be to right click and save as, and then you'll be able to download the file from there. And again, I want to emphasize that, as Carol mentioned, there's going to be a batch download for this data in a CSV format as well, which I know is a potentially more familiar format. So that's going to be available and made accessible as well.
Yeah, for folks who are so inclined, the JSON format, JSON format, is really useful if you have another application that you would like to pull the data into. But certainly, yes, with the bulk download, it'll be a standardized CSV format with metadata files.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we are coming to a close now. So I just want to thank everybody for your time this afternoon. And again, I want to thank the numerous EDA representatives, EDDs, and economic developers that participated in our testing, many of which are on this call. We thank you for your time and for your feedback. We couldn't have been able to build this platform without your input. So we're extremely grateful for that. We hope you get value out of this platform, and we are really glad to be able to put this together for you. As a final reminder, you have the link right now to the platform, but the availability of this tool is also going to coincide with the launch of Stats America's new website. So APRED is going to be very clearly and conveniently linked on there. So it's your one-stop shop to go to all tools that you normally go to in Stats America. APRED is going to be there as well. Please do take a moment to look at our FAQ section on the website. If you can, if you have any follow-up questions, we really did our best to try to address as many of the commonly asked questions that we received over the last year or so of testing with you guys. Otherwise, we look forward to hearing your questions and additional feedback through our Qualtrics survey. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time this afternoon.
Great to see everybody. Happy planning.